I think that often we overlook these obvious little things that the Scripture gives to us. And the first thing that we see is that Jesus, when he gets in this boat to cross over to the other side, he's not just crossing a lake. He's not just crossing the sea. He's crossing borders. He's going into another culture. He's going into a place that doesn't believe like the Jewish people believe. He's going into a pagan place. This is not a very safe thing to do. It's a very risky thing to do if you're a gang of Galilean Jews, right? And you show up on the shore of a place where there's a preponderance of powerful pork-preserving pagans, and you know that you are a, Jew who is not into pork at all, and so there's just all kinds of things that are not cool about what Jesus is doing. I can just imagine these conversations that are going on in the boat as they're going across. They're saying, Jesus, why here? Why the Gerasenes? What's the deal? Let's go back to Capernaum. Let's go back to Bethany. Let's go back something. Why are we doing this? And if if you read a little earlier, you see that basically on this boat journey over, they get caught up in a storm and they think they're going to die. And you can just think the whole time they're going, Jesus, why are we doing this? What is the point? We're going somewhere where they don't want you. You're going somewhere where they're not even Jewish. They're just a bunch of pagans, and they eat pork. And so when Jesus shows up on the shore, what happens? He's confronted by a demon-possessed man. Can you imagine the disciples in the boat? It's getting worse by the minute, right? They show up, and the first thing to greet him is not some nice farmer, not some nice fisherman, but a crazy, bloody, naked, screaming guy comes running out of the tombs and falls at Jesus' feet. He's a demoniac, a threat, a freak, a monster, an object of derision. Now I wonder what if Luke had said, a man with mental illness named Bob came running out of the tombs. I wonder how different we'd feel about the demon-possessed maniac. Does it change the way it feels a little bit if I were to say a demon-possessed, a mentally ill man named Bob? Does that change the way that you imagine this guy? If I talk about a demoniac who came out of the tombs, you get this picture, don't you? You get the picture of this guy. But what if he was just a guy who was sick? And I believe there are a lot of times in the Scripture where someone is called demon-possessed and really they were mentally ill. If you look at the symptoms of a lot of these people, you can see there's definite physiological reasons. But see, in that culture, in that day, anything that could not be expressly defined by cause and effect was demonic. You get that? So anything that could not be explained rationally by what they understood was demonic. And this guy was filled with something that wasn't right. He was sick. He was filled with something evil. But see, here's the thing. I'm convinced that Jesus never once saw a demoniac or a tax collector or a prostitute or a publican or a sinner. I don't believe Jesus ever saw people like that. Because that's what we do to separate ourselves from people. See, we turn people into objects so that we don't have to really let them get under our skin. You know what I mean? We like to have categories we can place people in so that we don't really have to cross that border ourselves. Does that make sense? And see, it comes from this, holy culture in America. We don't smoke and we don't chew and we don't go with those that do. You know, we're not going to go across that border. We're not going to go to that unsafe place. We're not going to be willing to do these things, to associate ourselves with these kinds of people. And so we make a category for them, and we turn them into objects, and we stick them into their category. And as long as they stay in their category, we can feel safe, right? See, this is exactly what they did with Bob. See, Jesus didn't see a demon-possessed, crazy, bloody, screaming guy. He saw Bob. Maybe that's his name. I just like the name Bob. I get so excited sometimes I say it backwards. Jesus then asks him the most important question, and this to me is the crux of this reading today. Jesus asked him, "Who are you?" Isn't it devastating that this man has no name? Isn't it devastating that he has no identity left? The only identity he has is the one that he is captive to, the legion. Who are you, Jesus says. It is the most important question that you can ask yourself, or that anyone can really define. Who are you? Oh, I'm the demon-possessed guy from the tomb. No, you're not. Oh, I'm the cop. No, you're not. Oh, I'm the vicar. No, you're not. What are you? We got to strip through all these categories, all these things that keep us from really understanding where the true life of our identity is. See, this man was completely and totally defined by what assailed him. I remember one night in Northampton, I was on the street. I might have told you this story before. I probably have. Only got so many stories. Been here a while. And so this boy comes up to me. And he's very early 20s, good-looking kid. And he comes walking up to us on the outreach. I'm standing on the street by the sign that says Christian do-gooder. And so he comes walking up and he goes, "You a Christian?" And I say, "Yeah." He says, "You believe in the Bible?" "Yeah." "Then you hate me." I'd never even met the kid. "You hate me." I'm like, "What?" "You hate me." I'm like, "Why do I hate you?" He says, "Because I'm gay. I'm gay and you're a Christian. So you hate me because the Bible tells you you have to." So you see, the thing for me that was so sad was that this amazing young man could not see himself through any other lens. His identity was completely wrapped up in his sexuality. And guys, I can tell you, anytime there's something in your life that becomes so big that it becomes your main identifier, you better make sure that that something is healthy, that that something is right. Because if you allow yourself to be defined by the wrong thing, it will destroy your life. You know what I mean? If you start seeing how you see yourself and how you identify yourself in the world is one of the most important things that you can get on top of in your life. Because if you don't, believe me, this world will try to define you. It will put its definition upon you. It will try to tell you who you should be. And it will make you feel bad because you never can be exactly what you're supposed to be in this world's eyes. Does that make sense? You ever experienced that? Do you hear the voice of the world telling you this is who you should be, but you just cannot look good enough? You just don't have enough money to pull it off? You know, can I be honest with you? A lot of times I like to cook. A lot of times I see this thing, and the reason I cook this dish is because it looks so darn good in the magazine. When I cook it, it never looks that good. Now, I tell you what, if I defined myself based upon how well I prepare food, guess what happens when I prepare a bad dish? You know, suddenly, I'm just a terrible person. Ever happen to anybody here? You get defined by something that you really shouldn't define yourself by? See, this man has become completely defined by his problems, by what assails him. He's been robbed of his joy and his health by what hinders him and what keeps him bound up, what keeps him from really living. But sadly, this is also how other people identify him, how other people see him. They tried to chain him up. He was a nuisance to them. He was a danger to them. He ruined the property prices, for crying out loud. You know? Who wants a naked, bloody, crazy, screaming guy in the neighborhood? It's not good for the school zone. You know, I mean, this guy is a hassle. But even in his darkest moment, this is what I love. Even in his darkest moment, God, who is standing on the other side of the lake, saw him and was willing to take the risk, was willing to get into that boat and cross the boundary, go wherever it took for him to reach Bob. Because Bob was important. And so Jesus asked him, "Who are you?" And his response is, "We are Legion." Now, if you go into the Roman thing about Legion, a legion is about 6,000 soldiers, right? And some people think that Mark was making some political commentary there, and we could go into that, but I won't. Okay? The thing that I think is important to recognize is when he says legion, he means lots and lots. There's lots of influences here, Jesus. There's lots of voices. There's lots of fear. There's lots of temptations. There's lots of distractions. There's lots of worry. There's lots of loneliness. There's lots of failure. This is what defines me, Jesus. I'm Legion. I'm Legion. Can you relate? Is he sounding a little less foreign now? Don't we also tend to define ourselves in terms of our deficiencies? In terms of our setbacks? Our disappointments and our failures? I can remember, one of the first things that happens to me, and I can take the temperature of a group of believers really quick. If I go into a situation, and all you got to do is if you come into a new church, right, and you lay down some new idea, and immediately you can tell where they're at by how they respond. And see, one of the really frustrating things that I used to have happen all the time, like over in Waikanai, I would say, "I think we should try this." And then somebody would say, "Oh, no, we already tried that." "Oh, no, it didn't work." "No, we tried that." I mean, it must have been probably 10, 15 ideas I brought up. "Oh, no, we did that. We did that back in 88. Didn't work." So what are they defined by? By their failure. "Oh, I guess it can't happen. I guess it can never succeed then. It failed once." Imagine you ever burn the cookies? How many like making cookies? I like making them and I like eating them. You ever burn a batch of cookies? Any cookie burners in here? Did you stop making cookies? No, of course not. Because you love the cookies too much. Right? Well, see, do we love life that much to keep going? To rise above our deficiencies, to rise above our disappointments and our failures. Because that's what Jesus is calling this man to. Why is it that every time we want to take a risk or make a commitment or try to be vulnerable, we're reminded of every failure and every disappointment and every time you've experienced something bad before? Is this ringing anybody's bell? Can you relate to this? Every time you go to step out to do something new, all you can think about is all the times that it hurt. All the times you got hurt by stepping out, taking the risk. And so what happens to us is we actually become very risk averse. We don't want to do those things. And so we may not look quite as weird, but we are in our own way locked away in a tomb, locked away somewhere, running through the darkness, hoping one day to stumble upon our identity. Well, guess what? You don't have to stumble upon your identity because Jesus sees you and he comes to you. Here's the other problem that he's facing, and we're coming in for a landing soon. We also live in a culture that seeks to create in us a palpable sense of lack and insecurity. Do you believe that? I mean, everywhere you turn, there's something trying to give you a sense of insufficiency. Something that's trying to nurture an emptiness inside of you that can only be filled by purchasing what is being advertised. Right? There's this new advertisement that's come out that's driving me nuts. It's on the radio, and maybe you've heard it. It's, Joe gets up and he makes a cup of coffee in his advertised cup with advertised coffee, and and he goes through this advertise, and the whole point is, well, shouldn't you advertise? And it's like, what is it that advertising is trying to do? It's trying to tell us we don't have enough. We shouldn't be happy. You shouldn't be content. Our economy is built on discontentment. Creating it, fostering it, telling you that what you have ain't good enough, you need new stuff, right? We all know it. And see, so is it any wonder that we become defined by our stuff or our lack of it? I remember there was a good friend of mine who was doing some marriage counseling for a man and woman in Auckland, and they were a very well-to-do couple. And this guy was talking with my friend, and he said, look, I'll do anything. I'll do anything to save my marriage. Anything to save my marriage. I know we're in trouble. I'll do anything. So my friend says, well, I noticed that you've got an $80,000 car out there. Why don't you just go sell that car? Buy yourself a new $20,000 car. Take some of that money and take your wife on a round-the-world cruise. Just take 40 grand of that money from that car and just go out and take a round-the-world cruise. Get to know each other. Take that time. And the guy looks at him and says, sell my car? Sell my car? What, are you crazy? What's he defined by? You see, the Gadarenes, the Gerasenes, or the Gadarenes were pig people. This was their identity. They sold pork to the Roman armies and the bureaucrats. They were a very economically success-driven people. And so, but this guy had been a nuisance to them. This guy had been in chains. This guy had been somebody they didn't want around. They tried to do everything they could to control him, right? So you can imagine how many times they've prayed for this guy to get better. How many times they prayed for God to do something. You think somebody was saying, God, please do something about this naked, bloody, crazy, screaming guy. He's scaring the kids. Right? And so God does. God finally shows up. God finally starts doing something powerful, something miraculous. And what is their response? Get out! Stay out! We don't want your kind here. You're ruining everything. You know how much those pigs are worth? And now why did they do that? Well, basically because Jesus loved people more than pigs. And I'm sorry if you're a big pig lover. This is a pig-loving problem here, this passage, a pig lover's passage problem. But see, Jesus loves people more than pigs. However, we love our pigs, don't we? We love them. We love these pigs that make us feel secure. We've all got pigs, don't we? Just all a little different. You might have your ego pig. You need to stroke that pig once in a while, right? Or your materialism pig. Whatever. We all have pigs. See, you know how to define a pig? Here's how you define a pig. A pig is anything in your life you want to keep Jesus away from. Anything in your life you want to keep Jesus away from? Jesus, I give you this, and this. Just leave that alone. This is my thing. I don't want you messing with this part, Jesus. Just all this other stuff. Well, I'll tell you, the part you don't want Jesus messing with, that's your pig. And when Jesus comes on the shore of your life and starts asking you this fundamental question, the most important question, which is, who are you? I'll tell you what you're going to hear. You know what you're going to hear? You're going to hear a pig start screaming. And that pig will start screaming and squalling and squawking in your ear, and that's all you will hear. And guess what? That'll be what you define yourself by. And sadly, this is how so many people define themselves. If you don't believe me, just go hang out in the pub late at night. You want to see how people identify themselves. And the moment you start having a conversation with someone about Jesus, and you can hear the pig squalling. What are your pigs? Are you willing to let them go over the bank into the lake? Here's the most beautiful part of this passage. After healing this man, Jesus leaves. The only thing Jesus did in the land of the Gerasenes, the whole reason for the boat ride and surviving the storm, everything Jesus did, he did for that one man. He did for Bob. Because Bob was worth it. Could it be that Jesus' whole detour was simply to set Bob free? To transform his identity from being legion to being beloved? My friends, that's exactly what I believe Jesus did. And I believe Jesus does the same thing today. He'll cross whatever border, whatever boundary, whatever safe thing you have, whatever kind of fence you've built to keep him out, whatever you want, Jesus will come to you and he will identify your pigs and he'll ask you the question, who are you? Who are you? What's defining you today? And what has Jesus communicated to him? I'll tell you who you are, Bob. You're not the naked, bloody, crazy, screaming guy. You're not the freak. You're not the failure. You're not the disappointment. You're God's beloved child. And if God is for you, who can be against you? Nothing can separate you from God's love, Bob. Life can't, death can't. Nothing ever created, height or depth. Nothing in all of creation can ever separate you from God's love, Bob. That's who you are. And then at the end, Jesus gives Bob a mission. From here on in, Bob, I want you to live an abundant and fruitful life, Bob. I want you to stay free, Bob, and here's how you're going to do it. You're going to go and tell people your story. You're going to tell people, Bob, how good God has been to you. You're going to show people what it really looks like to be loved. You're going to show people what it really means to know what it is to be loved. And you're going to love people. Your life is going to rock. I want you to go home. I want you to tell people that you are a loved, liberated, and redeemed child of God. This is who you are. This is who you are. So who are you today? You. Who are you? Is this your identity? Because I tell you what, if you will live out of this identity, if you will say about yourself, if they come to you and say, Wayne, who are you? And you say, I am a loved, liberated, redeemed child of God. That's who I am. The other day, Leon came and he asked me this question. It was in the night. And he comes to me with a sword. And he looks at me and he says, who are you? And I said, I'm a man of God. I'm a child of the living God. And I start talking and I'm walking slowly and I'm telling him and he's sensing it. And you can see this look in his face getting more and more filled with, man, you are a bad fella. But see, this is what our faith, this is who we are. This is the confidence that God gives us. And this is what we go over time and time again. It's what Justine was talking about last week. It's what we talk about over and over because it is so important. What is your identity wrapped up in? How are you seeing yourselves? How many times did you tell somebody how good God has been to you this week? Think about that. If you ain't telling the story very much, I want to encourage you to start. Because there's something powerful in it. To remind you of who you are. So here's some reflection questions. How do you identify yourself? What is the legion that tries to control and define you? What are those voices you hear? Are there pigs in your life that you try to protect by sending Jesus away? And how often do you tell others how much God has done for you? It's good food for thought.